Because I wasn't going to take that to the planning commission. I was going to take that, and I brought the planning commission issue to the council.
It said, in the high districts, candidates must represent voters cast ballots.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that what that Mr. Nelson wanted to do? With the
Yep.
word?
I called you back.
You could only vote.
I got the message.
in
I
area.
think I called you back.
I don't know if that's what he was wanting to do.
Yeah, that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
That's what
We're not going anywhere else tomorrow.
Call it up.
Hey, how are you? Doing good.
Probably solves itself. It's a little bit of work for you guys, but on the back end, it's no work to
Oh,
issue tickets.
man, the city council gets to
Yeah,
appoint.
interesting. All right. Well, keep us updated.
Yeah, it's back to square one.
And how are you? Fine, thank you.
Oh. Hi, Hannah. How are you doing? All right. Good.
Hi, Dennis.
Hey, I got some stuff on the truck.
I think it's going to help me.
Help me?
Huh?
Help me? Good stuff.
You guys ready?
Well, I guess
I had to show Rob the turkey vultures.
He showed me the turkey buzzards. Vultures.
You don't know about this?
They're like turkey buzzards.
They're amazing.
When I was going home, I was thinking about I had a snake on the side of the road, so I pulled over, because I never saw it.
Tori, these don't work.
Chris just ran back there to see if he can get it.
Can we go ahead and get started then?
Let's just go
She's doing fine. Her husband is the one we're worried about. I have to get to graduate. Well, he took a year off. They're Christian. And Mongolia is the
Share space here.
Is there one for Jay?
Looks like the master
Well, this, you know, his tuition. They don't pay much.
There's no power up here. Yeah, we're trying to sort that out. We need to pull power. Can you move it back there?
Find that guy that's gonna, they're making, no, you got to.
Please bear with us a couple of minutes. We're trying to get the sound turned on.
It's still long. No insurance.
Something's have changed. They're trying to figure out. They're flashing now.
Because she's down there, her husband's going to school.
Now we're booting up.
Slowly but surely.
Is that what you call it?
We are booting up. Hi, Jay. It's software. Or it could be firmware. Or it could be NVM. That's what we change. Yeah, I was here plenty of times, wasn't I? Well, it keeps booting up. It's what I'm trying to reboot right now.
They boot up and then they shut down.
Our machines are all synchronized.
Those are the Kaiser Clinic, there's some major problems.
There's some screw with some microphones back there with the system here. They won't turn on.
We're gonna have to talk about.
Yep, so you're gonna have to project.
We will have a recording, the microphone from the live stream, so we'll have something at least.
But if you guys can do your best to project,
We're not gonna have microphones tonight, so.
Call the meeting to order at this time. Can everybody hear me? We haven't got the sound, we can't get it to come on, so we're not yelling at you, we're just trying to project our voice out to you. So I apologize for that, but that's the technicians, the technology is always good when it works.
Oh, geez.
When it doesn't work, it's no good. So, anyway, with that said, roll call.
Mayor Grimes?
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Wiggins? Councilmember Henry?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
here.
Councilmember Wallstrom?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wiggins is absent today.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to have you stand for the invocation. We've got Gus Ramos here from the Church of the Nazarene, is it?
Yep.
And what I'd like to do at this time, we've all heard of the tragedy that happened in Las Vegas last night. I understand that the count dead is now up to 59. Numerous people have been killed, and it affects all of us here. Personally, I know it has affected my family from a personal standpoint, and so let's remember these people in a moment of silence, and then we'll have you give the invocation. Thank you.
Gracious God, this evening we acknowledge that you are good. We acknowledge, Lord, that you are powerful. We acknowledge that you know everything. You know all, and that is why Lord, we invite you into this meeting here tonight. Lord, we pray that your presence will fill our hearts and fill the decisions and the things that need to be shared this evening, Lord. We pray, Father, for all the business. We pray, Lord, for the people that have poured into a lot of these different activities that are going on in our town and the different things that are happening. And so, Lord, we just pray that, Lord, that your will be done. We pray, Father, that, Lord, that you will also be with, as we have shared this moment of silence, that you be with the families, Lord, who have been affected by just a lot of the stuff that is going on, especially last night, Lord. Father, we pray for those who have lost loved ones. We pray for those who are hurting, who are trying to get answers for what is going on. And Lord, we just pray tonight that you help us to see that, Lord, that you can bring peace and that you can bring calm into our hearts and all that is happening. So Lord, be with us again tonight. Bless this meeting. Bless this time. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Key, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Dan or Hart, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor, for that moment.
Our next order of business is the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and non-controversial by city staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion if no member of the council or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the city council meeting concerning the item before action is taken. At this time, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to pull anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, council?
Motion to approve consent?
Second.
I have a motion and a second on an item as discussed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Let the record show that it is 4 ayes. Our next order of business is the public comments. The City Council welcomes public comments on any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. We respectfully request that this public forum be utilized in a positive and constructive manner. Persons addressing the council should first state their name and area of residence, the matter of city business to be discussed, and the organization or persons represented, if any. To ensure accuracy in the minutes, please fill out a speaker's card that is at the podium. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes at this time to make a public comment, keeping in mind that you have 3 minutes? Sure.
Law Professor Barbara Reynolds, Tehachapi resident 44 years. I want to take this opportunity to thank one of the unsung heroes of Tehachapi, and that is Chief Kroger, for his splendid collaboration with the Tehachapi Senior Center. They are promoting what's called the Silver Alert for those seniors who have certain developmental issues, that they may become lost. There's a certain criteria they're establishing for going to see and check on the welfare of these individuals, and they're also in collaboration with the California Highway Patrol. I commend the chief for that. There's also the promotion of a program to see that seniors are aware of emergency preparedness, that if something occurs in the city of Tehachapi, you need to be able to be on your own for 3 days, and that includes seniors. If we are informed, we can then prepare, and the chief, in collaboration with the senior center, is doing just that on October the 19th at the police department from 6 to 8 p.m. I think it is splendid. I will see to it that this is posted on my page, Unsung Heroes and Heroines of Kern County, which I've recently promoted, and which, if I share that, can reach as many as 1 million people. I intend to do that. This is very important. I am a senior, and I thank God I don't look like one, but thanks to Chief Kroger, he's doing a remarkable job, and so are his officials and the officials at the Tehachapi Senior Center. Thanks for the time, and please share this.
Thanks, Barb, and everyone here on the council, I think, is in the senior mode also, so.
Speak for yourself.
Speak for yourself.
And we don't look like it.
Speak for me.
Okay, any other comments from the public? Seeing none, let's move on. Item number 6, Public Works Director.
Item number 2. Number 2, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, number 2, yeah. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. My name is Rob Ball. I'm with Kern Council of Governments. We are a regional transportation planning agency. Can you hear me all right back there? Okay. As a regional transportation planning agency, we work for you. We work for Phil Smith on our board. He's our longest standing member on the Kern COG board, and we really believe it's important to get out here. There was recently some state climate change law that requires us to run by some of the assumptions in our long-range regional transportation plan, and I'll be going over those briefly in the folders that you have before you. And in those, in that requirement, they require that we meet at 2 cities representing at least 50% or more of the population, and we just go out to everybody. And so we really want your input and feedback in this process. And so what I have here is a letter talking about the series of these little presentations that we're doing, presentation workshops that we're doing. The real emphasis of tonight is to solicit your city council's feedback directly to KernCog staff. You can either contact us directly, considering us as one of your staff, or work through your own local staff here and do a joint letter, however you want to do it. But I have a variety of information I'm going to go through. You can see our list of meetings that we're doing, these presentations. And the first one is this table with the green columns. And some of you may be aware that recently gas tax increase was passed. And these green columns represent the increased funding that your community will be looking at. And so let's go through here and look at Tehachapi. The gas tax is going to be phased in over several years, plus there's other funding sources, diesel tax increase, DMV increase, that'll be phased in over time. By 21-22, it's expected to be at full funding level. And so we show an additional $330,000 per year for local road maintenance for the city of Tehachapi. That will be in the year, beginning in the year 21-22, probably staying pretty close to that constant level over the next 10 years. Also, you combine that with other funding sources like your state gas tax apportionment at $261,000 a year, the first of the white columns. RSTP, which is a federal source of funding, $163,000 a year. And then your Transportation Development Act, local transportation fund source, which is the quarter-cent sales tax on gas that we all pay already. Goes in as another $451. Tehachapi historically has used about $134,000 of that for transit, and $316,000 per year. All total from those sources, we are estimating that this will give you a potential of $1.2 million per year for road maintenance within the city of Tehachapi. However, if you go on over, there was that first column I skipped over. It shows your pavement condition index according to the statewide survey was at 45 out of 100. It says that you will need about $3.2 million a year to get all your roads back up to what's considered 85 out of 100, which is really good in terms of your road condition. A good solid B in terms of your road condition. So you have only about 40% of the funding with the new SB1 that is needed to get your roads up to 85 pavement condition index in a 10-year time frame. With this new fund, you might be able to get there in maybe 20, 30 years, depending on what are the sources you can cobble together. But what SB1 is doing is it's giving our member jurisdictions new flexibility between funding. I kind of skipped over that second green line. They are increasing the amount of funds for transit. Well, if you can use the SB1 funds to fund your transit, which is $67,000 a year, you can transfer that $67,000 per year in TDA that you're using for transit also into roads. And so there's some new flexibilities that your public works staff, Jay, will be able to kind of bring to you to bring up some of these. Key thing on this is that you need to adopt a list for new road projects, maintenance road projects by, I believe it's October 20th? 16th. October 16th. So that's coming up pretty quick, and Jay's on top of it. I think you guys already did your list? It's on for tonight. Okay, all right. How do we time that? So, okay. So you're all briefed on that. I should go real fast. Second page, there is an interesting, this is a breakdown of our transportation funds countywide And we have different categories of funding. You can see how much is coming in from local sources, state sources, federal sources. And when we adopted our 2014 Regional Transportation Plan, we assumed an 11% increase in transportation funding above and beyond the historic rates of funding that we got. And we have actually seen an increase in transportation funding through SB1, through the state cap and trade program, but that funding isn't going to the sources that we might have wanted to. It's going specifically to bike and pedestrian projects, for example. And your city has been very adept at promoting those projects and getting out in front of it, because they recognize that the funding pots and what those funds are being used for are changing. So it's so if you don't go after those dollars, you're not going to get those dollars for road maintenance projects. You're only going to be able to get those dollars for bike and pedestrian projects. And so the state law, things have changed quite a bit over the past 5-10 years. And so we need to be flexible in there. This also has some interesting, we show some of the expenditures and some of the benefits that we had. And we're going to be assuming a similar increase in funding over the next cycle, over the next 20 years. Some of the benefits you can see down here is if you are fully funding your transportation system, getting that road maintenance up to where it needs to be, and providing expansion, say on 58, going up and down between here and Bakersfield, so that people can do business quicker, better, cheaper, faster, you can see an increase in potential jobs saved. You can see an increase in actual jobs generated to the tune of about, 6,800 new jobs for Kern County in this area. And the total cost of this is around, 200 of a, say, potential increase in funding is about $269 per household. But average household savings is anywhere from $517 to $1,423 in those areas. So there's a lot of little detailed in there, a lot of footnotes to read, but the cost of increasing transportation funding is way offset by the benefit to household costs. I also want to point out in the line, the table with the blue lines on it, if you look at the second page towards the bottom, it shows Tehachapi. In the Regional Transportation Plan with the SB1 funding, we're seeing in ready-to-go projects, those are ready to go over the next 20 years or so, 5.8% of the funding, and the next in line projects, about 10.7% of the funding that's in the current plan. And our share in Tehachapi region is 4.3% of the population, so you guys are leveraging more than your share in the population within the Regional Transportation Plan. And so finally, this is your homework. I have here a list of projects, the ready to go or fix it first funding sources, the regional projects that are ready to go, as well as the next in line, and then advanced tech, safe, clean transportation projects. That's the biggest list. And this is a list of bike and pedestrian facilities within the Tehachapi Valley, not just the city limits, but Tehachapi and the county areas as well. And we're looking for input on that. As a matter of fact, we're in the midst of finalizing the Kern Active Transportation Plan, which has that listing of bike and pedestrian projects that's reflected here. And we'll be back probably in a month or so doing a specific presentation on those bike and pedestrian projects. When we have an adopted plan at KernCog, your staff can put that into their active transportation plan grants, and it gets them, I believe, an extra 5 points towards their plan. So we want to put this in place as quickly as possible. Also in your packets, I have a folder, and one of the key things I'm here to talk about is, let me get to it. There's a map, two maps in here. Here they are. Planning assumption maps. We're required to discuss the planning assumptions with you. And one of our key, you'll see here is a map with a lot of little skinny red lines on it. Those red lines represent projects that are next in line. Next in line is a euphemism that we don't have any funding for these projects. Right now, if our transportation funding stays at current levels, none of those red projects are going to get funded. The green projects are the ones that have been funded or are in the plan and will be funded over the next 20 years. And so we're moving ahead on those. You have those in the detailed listing. The second map on here is our land use assumptions. And this is a map that shows transit priority place types and strategic employment place types. And one of the key elements of our sustainable community strategy, which is a chapter of the regional transportation plan, is a distributed land use where outlying communities have a mix of amenities and retail and housing that provides everything that would allow for say a worker that works out in the wind farms or in aerospace or to want to both live and work and be able to minimize the amount of travel that they need. Also have close access to transit and some of those other options. And what these dots on this map represent is that mix of development that really promotes strong, vibrant, outlying communities, like Tehachapi, and like Tehachapi has been growing for the past several decades. And this we find is one of the most effective ways to combat our emissions, the state's emissions goals, and bring those emissions goals about, is by creating balanced communities so that people can actually live closer to where they work and have shopping, be able to walk and bike to where they want to their amenities so that they're not always having to drive everywhere, those kinds of options. And Tehachapi, with your form-based codes general plan, is one of our top strategies that we tout to our state reviewing agencies and other stakeholders as an example of how other regions can do it better. And so you guys are doing a great job, and that's it on that requirement there. There's also a packet of maps in your, and we were here back in, I believe it was June, late May, early June, or late June, early, or somewhere around that time. And what we've done is we've compiled the input. We had some maps that people marked up, and we compiled that input on the maps. Now, these aren't really scientific. This is feedback, though, that we received from the public in this area at a workshop that we had in June, as well as at the Tehachapi Mountain Festival about a year ago. So some of this information, like on road maintenance, your city staff may have already addressed some of those issues since then. But it has here, for example, bike and pedestrian facilities and new transit facilities that may be of interest to folks. And this is just support for you to kind of go through that as you compare that list of projects. You'll see that those people that participated in those events, that we're trying to capture as much of that information as possible. So we hope it's helpful to each of you in providing feedback to us on what ends up in the final regional transportation plan. So I think I covered everything. Oh, one last item. We're going to be back here on Sunday. And on Sunday, that woke everybody up. We're doing the Best Drive Ever event. And this event is an opportunity, if you haven't had a chance to drive an electric vehicle. And they're going to have, I think it's about a dozen electric vehicles. It looks like set from 17 automakers. So 17 electric vehicles, you can kind of go around and test drive. One of the best strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions is to accelerate conversion of our transportation system to electric. Electric that is generated by renewable sources such as wind energy. And you guys are in the heart of that. And so we're encouraging folks to come and participate. We're also looking for volunteers to kind of help do traffic control a little bit, make sure that the folks that are doing this. We had a big turnout. I think it was like 120 folks show up at the one in Bakersfield a couple of weeks ago. And again, it's just one more effort that we are working hard to meet these state goals, because if we don't meet these state goals, we can't get access to our transportation funding. So that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point, and thank you for your time.
Okay, any questions that the council has?
I do. Ron, was it Ron?
Yeah, Rob.
Rob. On your form-based plan, when you look at the plans that the city of Tehachapi and everybody else gives you in Kern County, is there any quantifications of whether they work or not? Or if they're just paper plans or?
The form-based codes, we haven't seen a lot in terms of development since you guys enacted your form-based code. However, we do have an assumption for growth in this plan based upon your local general plan. And that assumption for growth is showing a reduction in overall greenhouse gas emissions. It isn't just the land use, though. That's one piece of it. It's a combination of increased use of electric and alternative fueled vehicles, doing other strategies, transit strategies, those types of things that increase or create a transportation system that's more efficient. And more efficient means uses less energy. Less energy means that we have lower CO2 emissions.
Got you there. Have you looked at our transit numbers or transit numbers for around the Kern County?
Personally, I'm not up on it, but a gentleman by the name of Bob Snoddy that works at our office does get monthly reports, I believe, from your transit system. And we try to keep close tabs, and when folks are having difficulty, we have 3 or 4 transit district or transit agencies, cities, municipalities right now that are having difficulty meeting fare box. I can't remember whether it's...
And we're one of them.
Yeah, okay.
And is Kern Cog happy with that, or do... let's put it all on the table.
We need... where's Bob when I need him? The transit is a key component, and we need a more efficient transit system. But your guys' issue is not unique. We're seeing statewide, nationwide reduction in transit usage. Some people believe it's the new transit network, transportation networking companies like Uber and Lyft. I don't know that you guys have Uber and Lyft up here in Tehachapi Valley. I know we have it down there. There's other issues that when your economy improves, transit usage slips. And so there's a lot of variables in there. It's important that we make the most efficient transportation system that we can do. One of the key things I mentioned about our number one issue that we heard from the public, I didn't mention this, was maintenance. Why aren't you fixing the roads? What are you building bike lanes for? Those types of things. We need our roads maintained. Well, I talked about that new flexibility. If you don't meet your fare box, you can't take your TDA funds that you're using for roads, and you got to use them on transit until you get your fare box. Where to be able to have the right to use your TDA funds on roads, you need to make your fare box, and so you need to come up with strategies. And I believe there's been some good strategies proposed up in the Tehachapi area to try and improve and increase the fare box ratio. And for those people who don't know, fare box means that you need at least, in outlying areas, 10% of the revenue that's used to operate the system coming from the actual fares that are sold to ride the system.
And is that an acceptable number?
That's the state law minimum requirement for rural areas. It's 20% in metropolitan areas. And it's pretty much, there are very few transit system, bus systems anywhere that pay 100%.
And that's the reason for my question. And it's a disappointing number. you know,
Yes, it is.
to anybody logical.
Sure.
And so, and I know that I guess what I'm trying to say is, since it's a disappointing number, it's an unacceptable number. And should we be putting the money into this mass transit and getting nothing out of it, except for going in the hole every year? And taking that money away from road maintenance, which, you know, I understand we get a portion of that, you know, to go back into our streets and whatever.
Hmm. And
Do we have a better plan for that?
Yeah.
I mean,
you gotta remember, when the voters enacted that quarter-cent sales tax, it was primarily for transit. And so, it's one of these things where there's a loophole that if you've funded all your transit and everything, and you have any left over, you can use it for roads.
Correct.
It's the lowest priority. And so, that's kind of the way the law is written. Now, if somebody wants to go in and amend the law and say, hey, let's take that quarter-cent and put it towards road maintenance, you know, that might be a worthwhile endeavor.
and I don't know if you know, but, you know, just from my understanding, how would you go about even trying to do that? You know? Trying to make something efficient that's so inefficient.
So, in terms of making the transit system more efficient,
Yeah.
we are in the midst of a pilot project. Well, we're getting ready to gear up on a pilot project. We've just done a study that has designed the pilot project where Kern Regional Transit is going to, in Lamont, park one of its dial-a-rides and use a transportation networking company like Uber, Lyft, or Waze, one of those cell phones. And the dial-a-ride van, the money that they save from parking that dial-a-ride van, they're gonna use to subsidize Uber, Lyft, which operates 24/7, not just, you know, weekdays or whatever. And still operate the other van for those people who are disabled that need a way to get around. And that savings plus the more flexible transit networking company, where it's basically coming right to your doorstep and taking you right where you need to go, we think in Lamont is going to increase ridership for the overall system, because a lot of those rides will go from their doorstep to the Kern Regional Transit stop, and then those folks will go on down into Bakersfield or wherever they need it. So there's some new changes, new paradigms that are coming about that we think might make the transit system more efficient and reverse some of these downward trends.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is if there's a thought about making, I know in the last, I don't know how many years, there was no thought about making mass transit any more efficient than what it is, so I'm going to.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point. This is like the first time in about 30 years there's a new tool in the transit toolbox.
Well, it's true though.
So, yeah. Good point.
And on your projection of roads for 80%, where does that come from?
There was a statewide study. Are you familiar with the state and local roads needs assessment that was put on by a grant by the League of Cities and the California Association of Counties and all those? They've been surveying, and the information that they get sometimes is hit and miss. And so they will do a statistical estimate to say they didn't get the most recent number from your community, and that number but it's one source for all the data. And so your city may, and it's like already almost a couple of years old now in terms of the actual survey data. So you guys may have made a lot of progress since that last one. So the key thing also is that study looked at and came up with a number of what it would cost to bring it up to 85 PCI. SB1 says if you bring yours up to just 80 PCI, that it that you can use the SB1 dollars for maintenance for other local transportation priorities. And the great thing about getting up to 80 or 85 PCI is that you can see a reduction in the maintenance cost like by 10 times, because you're no longer rebuilding the road, you're just out there oiling it once every 3 years, which you know very well.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
My only thought is that the usable life of asphalt is not gonna be 20 years, especially on some roads. And the roads typically that we've surveyed and counted vehicles and stuff on it is, I don't think that's gonna work real well. And I'm not bagging on Kerncog at all.
No, that's,
No,
you're,
or you.
These are good
My thought
discussions.
my thought is efficiency and real numbers and real time and what really happens. You know, and you can look at our roads and see what really happens. And the traffic counts that we took and over the years, and it hasn't worked out really well for us.
yeah.
So-
Well, and every city is having that. If you look at that list, you
I
guys
know
are
they
one of the better cities.
I know they are.
Your
So
city's better off.
that's more food for thought for me, to say that if we have a system now
Yeah.
that is not working right, let's make a system that does work right.
Yeah.
You know, so our tax dollars, these people's tax dollars, go to where it's supposed to be going, and to do, I'd say real damage to the roads, you know, but, you know, to do something that really makes a difference, you know.
I can't agree with you more.
And I would imagine
yeah.
that people on the other side of the table, whether they say it or not, might have the same opinion, you know. And we want to see that, you know, California is almost an embarrassment.
It's
And we'd like to see that change a little bit. We'd like to see some, you know, far-reaching thinking and out of the box maybe, and, you know, not status quo, because status quo hasn't been working for us, as you can see if you ride around town or if you go down 58 or whatever.
Yeah, one of the biggest changes in status quo happened back in April with SB1. And we're looking at $5 billion being pumped into infrastructure, 2/3 going to road maintenance. And another 1/3 going to transit. And that transit has a flexibility piece to it to be actually, if you're fully funding your transit, you can display some of your funds and put in there. So this is probably the biggest positive direction change that I've seen in my career in the past quarter centuries.
Okay, so I'm just looking for a positive change.
Yeah, and so we're just on the cusp.
Just blowing it off.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
thank you.
And it's been a while since we visited, Dennis, so
Yes, it is.
Phil,
Right.
you have some?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the staff for having projects ready to go. Because as we have plans on the table, if we don't get it this cycle, but someone else is not ready, we get the funding. We've done this more and more and more. And thank you very much for having everything prepared. And with, like you say, Dennis, in a rural area, a rural dial-a-ride just isn't efficient. But if you get something like an Uber where, because people don't want to wait for a bus for, 10 o'clock, they need to get there now. So it's difficult. In an urban area, you've got fixed routes, it's coming every 15 minutes or whatever. It's a whole different scenario than out here in a rural area. So it's very difficult to meet the ridership of 10% even to pay for the cost of the service. It's very frustrating. And we have to use that money that we get for transportation for public transportation. We can't use it for anything else. Every dime we get from the state is allocated. You can use it here, here, and here. So if we can improve that somehow and get the 24/7, then you're going to have people maybe using it more, and then use that money more efficiently. So I'm always,
And that's my point, I'm looking for
because we're
efficiency,
wasting that money
because we are
on
wasting that
services that aren't used,
Exactly.
and the roads are falling apart. It's very
money. That could
frustrating.
be another shovel full of asphalt on the ground instead of one in the pothole.
That's exactly right. So, and it's easier to do maintenance than it is when it's so bad that you have to dig it up completely and redo it. So if we could get to the maintenance part of it.
Great.
But we haven't had much funding from the federal level coming toward the states lately. And it's a two-edged sword when you talk about gas tax and efficient vehicles, because you take an electric vehicle that doesn't buy much gas if at all, it's not putting in the pot for gas tax.
Right.
The old 1980 Cadillacs, a gas guzzler, they're buying a lot of gas, they're putting in. But over time, you've got a reduction because of your efficiencies in fuel, but you have a reduction of revenue from the gas tax. So they need to reevaluate the formula of how we get the money, you know? So as we get better at driving more efficient, we lose the money to pay for the road that it needs to go on. So just, that's the other part of it. It's very frustrating.
It really is. SB 1 did also increase the DMV fee and added an extra $100 for electric vehicles. So it's the first step towards making electric vehicles pay their fair share for the roads.
Right.
And so that, they were anticipating that, but you're very right. 10 years from now, if we, are 50% electric vehicles on the road, this sudden increase in gas tax money and revenue has faded away, and we've lost our chance to bring our roads back up to that better level of pavement condition index. So we only have a short window here of 10 years before we start seeing gas tax revenue start to drop off, probably, particularly with the current administration's direction.
The problem with that, though, is that the state encouraged everybody to go to hybrids and electric vehicles and whatnot. I'm one of the suckers that did, and now they want to charge me an extra $175 a year because I have a hybrid. And I
Well,
don't think that's fair.
the other side of that, though, we all have to pay for the use of the road between here and wherever we're going, one way or the other. And we love getting there by ourselves usually instead of public transportation. So if I got an electric car and I've had the hybrids, but I still gotta pay, I need to pay the way like everybody else. And at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if you go back east in some places, every 20 miles, you're coming up to a booth and throwing money in. Toll booths, where you have, if you can't get it from the gas tax, you gotta get it from a toll, but the roads are a lot better shape too. So anyway, it's gotta be more directly toward the, in those cases, it is going in the toll, but it's going to the pavement. It's getting where it's supposed to go. Anyway, that's my spiel.
Okay.
We're all frustrated.
Any other questions that the public may have? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, you have till November 30th to get me comments. So we have plenty of time. Then there's going to be an environmental document released, maybe December, maybe January, and that will be another opportunity for your comment, public comment as well in that process, with hopeful adoption in May, June timeframe. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on. Public Works Director.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor Grimes and council members, first let me apologize for the length of my staff report. It's a lengthy process, so I'll try to hit the highlights. It's something that council should be familiar with. Back in 2014, the city entered into a letter of intent to start the formation of a joint agencies agreement between Golden Hills Community Service District, the city of Tehachapi, and the Tehachapi-Cummins County Water District. And the point of the joint agencies agreement is to finalize some of the highlights that were brought up in the letter of intent, and to put some pipeline and capacity sharing for a potential project for Golden Hills Community Service District. Like I said, to put those issues in concrete. So tonight I have a brief background for you, painting the picture of the last 3.5 years. I've attached the letter of intent to the agenda for your reference if needed. But in short, the joint agencies agreement, it does a number of things, because at first it establishes some capacity for the city in a future pipeline as our wells expand further to the east, which is the direction that, and Jay, you'll have to, maybe you can refresh my memory on the year that the report was done. We had a hydrogeologist it's been a number of years. Anyways, it pointed to the east for expansion. So that's the direction that everyone's marching. So again, the joint agencies agreement, it sets some capacity in a pipeline aside for the city for future development. In this case, it's 900 gallons per minute. It also establishes a coordination committee to discuss water issues within the Tehachapi Valley. And it also provides an avenue for the communities to ultimately agree to provide utility service for future developments outside of the current districts for the involved parties. The fiscal impact, the city is responsible for $100,000 for the construction of segment 3, which is the proposed section, the transmission pipeline. This represents approximately 37.5% of the capital cost to construct the transmission pipeline. And we're also responsible for $34,000 for segment 2 from equal capacity. And the timing of the payments are different. The payment for segment 3 will be reimbursed at the end of the construction project within a certain time frame, and then the payment for segment 2 will be reimbursed when the city actually installs well and takes capacity of the pipeline. So that could be some years off. So staff has discussed the fiscal impact with the finance director, and the monies weren't budgeted specifically in this fiscal year, but we do have the funds available. We do feel that this is a capacity increase. The water mitigation fund is the appropriate use. And if we choose to move forward with the agreement, the necessary adjustments will be made at mid-year.
Okay.
So, you guys have any questions?
Any questions from the audience first? Seeing none?
Have none.
I think it's a good idea that we're kind of investing in the future for our water needs. And, you know, that's an important issue up and down the valley right now, because apparently some of the cities and some of the counties didn't do that. We did. And so we're not having the problems that they're having in the valley with water issues, and that's a good thing. So we continue to invest in the future for our water needs, and again, that's a good thing. So.
I'd just like to ask, does that go both ways? Does the water flow both ways?
As far as?
As far as I don't, we're a little bit better situated than some of the communities around us. If they need water,
Yeah, it does touch on that. The agreement does. Currently we're just reserving the capacity, but we do have an emergency interconnect with Golden Hills on the
correct.
further east extension of this pipeline that we can use both ways for emergencies. If we need water, we can take it. Golden Hills needs water, they can take it. So that agreement would be the same. It actually talks about when the city installs a well and actually starts to utilize the pipeline, that emergency interconnect agreement would need to be amended to address an actual connection and set the parameters for how each agency meters. But that would be the intent to continue that good faith of sharing resources when one of the two entities would need them.
Yeah, but my thought is that if we were strapped and someone else was strapped her.
Yeah.
Thank you.
More strapped. Good point.
I like strapped better. But
That's
do we have the authority to limit the water that we put in that pipeline?
We're paying for the capacity up to 900 gallons per minute, so we would have that reserved regardless of whatever's flowing through that pipeline at any given time. We should have rights to 900 gallons per minute.
So we could suck them dry and take a 900 gallons a minute or what?
If we had to, I'm sure we could, but
That's my question.
hopefully
We're good
we don't
neighbors.
find ourselves in that situation.
I'm sure we will. Yeah, okay, thank you.
But the emergency interconnect is very important, because we could lose a well or something, or have a catastrophic event like an earthquake, or they could, where things go haywire, and we ship water their way, or they ship water our way. So
Correct.
that interconnect, I think, is very, very important.
Yeah.
And that's good planning. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second on the item as discussed. All those in favor to approve the joint agencies agreement between the city, Golden Hills Community Services District, and the Tehachapi Cummings County Water District pending final approval from the city attorney, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. Let the record show there's 4 ayes. Community Development Director.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor Grimes and council members, the first item I have for you tonight is the Landscaping and Lighting Assessment District Number 1, Annexation Number 15C. As a little bit of background, you guys may recall from about, 4, 5, 6 months ago when we brought the Pilot Travel Center Improvement Agreement to you, I mentioned that we would be bringing back to you an annexation of their property, their development into the Landscaping and Lighting District as a condition of approval of that project. So that's what I'm doing tonight. In short, it's a relatively minor annexation. What we would be adding to our citywide landscape and lighting district, number 1, it's the only one we've got, but we have a bunch of different subdivisions of it, is the street lights immediately associated with the Pilot Travel Center and the landscaping that the city will maintain in the median, the roadway median that is being constructed by them. This was a condition of approval of the project for Pilot, that they would vote themselves into this annexate or into this district to cover those maintenance costs into perpetuity. So that's my background for you. In short, the total annual maintenance and administration costs to the district have been estimated and prepared an engineering report, which is attached to this council report. It's a lot of pages further on. Actually, it's not attached to the report. It's not in the PDF, and that may be my oversight. There is an engineering report that was prepared. If it wasn't provided to you, I apologize. For the sake of time, I need to move forward anyway. I can explain that in a minute. Anyway, there was an engineering report prepared by Wildan Financial Services that produced the estimates for this district at $7,160.28. The only piece of property that is proposed for annexation is the 10.68 acre Pilot Travel Center property. There are no other properties proposed to be annexed, and so all of the $7,160 would be annexed and placed on their annual property bill levied against that property, again, in perpetuity. And as you guys recall, every year the finance director brings you a re-up of the levy of that annexation district, and so in years to the future, presuming you approve this process and they vote themselves in, this will become part of that annual process. Therefore, my recommendation for you all is that we adopt a resolution first initiating the proceedings for the annexation of properties to the Landscape and Lighting District Number 1, and to levy an authorized collection of assessments commencing with fiscal year 18-19. I also suggest we adopt a resolution declaring the intention to annex properties to Landscape and Lighting District Number 1 and conduct a property owner protest ballot proceeding on the matter of the new assessments related thereto commencing with fiscal year 2018-19. We need to set a public hearing date for the opening of that ballot and the reading of that balloted vote of December 4th, 2017. And Wildan Financial Services has been assisting us with this, as they do for all of our landscape and lighting districts. And therefore, I ask that you direct Wildan Financial Services on behalf of the city clerk to mail a public notice and official ballot to the affected property owner not less than 45 days before the date of the public hearing in accordance with Section 4 of Article... I don't know what is D in Roman numerals, does anyone know? Anyway, it's there in your report, Section 4 of the appropriate article of the California Constitution. So, boy,
I thought engineers knew
I'm
that.
supposed to know
It's supposed
that.
to be 1,000.
I'm pretty embarrassed, actually. So, I'm happy to take any questions y'all may have.
He still uses the slide rule. So. Okay, that's all one motion, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Any questions from the public?
Jay, it's a 13D.
Oh, it's 13D. The D
Yes.
is not a Roman. Okay.
It's an Article 13D.
Well, all right. I thought D was a...
I knew that. Okay. See, no questions from the public. What about the council? Any questions?
Have none, no.
That's kind of routine what we need to do with them. And boy, they're really going to town on that project.
Yes.
They want it done, completed when?
I'm not going to share that date because of the preposterous nature of it.
Okay.
It's less than a month is the date they want, but our big issue at this point, and the primary driver is we can't let the trucks start coming unless the roads are done. It just wouldn't
Sure.
be a safe issue. So they've got a lot of road work still to do, and it's gonna be tough. They're pushing hard.
And there's one more signal to go in, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's all gonna be synchronized, all those signals, and it's gonna flow so well.
That is the intent. On paper, it looks perfect.
All right.
That's-
Did
I'll make-
Tehachapi News hear that? It's gonna flow well, so.
I'll make a motion on staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second on the item as discussed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed, let the record show that it's 4 ayes. Item number 8.
Very good. Honorable Mayor and council members, my second item for you tonight is to follow up on what Mr. Ball presented during the comment period, is an update on SB 1 or Senate Bill 1 titled the 2017 Local Streets and Roads Funding Capital Project Budget Amendment. So SB 1 is known as the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, and it is set to raise taxes in the state on numerous vehicle-related expenditures, including fuel sales and vehicle registration fees. And I'd be happy if you have any questions on what Mr. Ball presented to give you some details. I had some delightful reading to prepare myself for this presentation. The resulting revenues are divided amongst the state and local agencies for the express purpose of roadway repair and improvement. It's estimated that the city of Tehachapi may get up actually higher than the number that Mr. Ball presented, up above $400,000 annually for a 10-year period, although we're being told that in the first few years we'll probably get less than that total number. I'm sure the state is hedging against, they simply don't know how much taxes they're going to collect once these go into effect. That said, the first year of the program starting now is set to deliver less than $400,000, like I said. So in order for us to receive the funds allocated to us, we blessedly have, relatively speaking, compared to other state programs, very little to do. We only have three primary things. We must provide a list to the California Transportation Commission of the projects we expect to direct this funding to by October 16th. And yes, that's no time at all. The list of the projects, initially, when I prepared the staff report at that time, the literature said that we must formally amend the project list into our budget, and which is my recommendation tonight. However, I learned just today that they've softened that rule. All we have to have is a resolution of the council. But since I've presented this as a budget amendment, that will be sufficient to lock in the funds, so I'm going to continue to hold to my recommendation tonight. But anyway. Item 2 is that the city needs to prepare an annual report of expenditures in October. At the end of this cycle, we have to send them a report telling them how much money we spent and how we spent it, which hopefully won't be too bad. And 3, the city must not route this money into existing maintenance activities. So they have some metrics in which they measure how much money we have spent in previous years on regular maintenance, streets and roads money, and we can't just, backfill people or street light contracts or something like that with this funds. Well, probably a pretty good idea, making sure that this new money really will get to road maintenance. So, but one of the pleasant sides of the way they've set this up is despite our obligation to give them a list of projects and to budget the money to these projects, we're not held to that list. So they're demanding we give them a list by October 16th, but then they give us full freedom to not spend the money on that project that we list to them and instead spend it the way we want, so long as it's spent on roadway maintenance or safety. Those are really the two primary components. So anyway, so because of the really short turnaround, staff, myself, the assistant city manager, and the public works director sat down and said, all right, where are we going to direct this money? We need to give them a project and knowing that it may not ultimately be the way we spend the money, and I'll explain that in a minute. But given that short time, we opted to simply expand the funds routed into this is what we're recommending, the surface seal of various roads project that we awarded here recently, so that we can capture the new funds. Our expectation is to then wait and see how much money is actually sent to us from the state and reconsider our options at that time. Here are the likely options that I could predict. One is that the use of the funds to cover the city's match requirement for that project. So in short, if we get a little bit of money, we're just going to spend it on the match, on the surface seal of various projects, which is an entitled project and a valid use of the money. Two, if there are still funds remaining after we cover the match, but it's a small amount of money left over, we may initiate a second surface seal coat project in spring of next year with the remaining funds. And then the third option would be if we get closer to the full 400,000, that perhaps we would amend the budget again to set aside those received funds and reorient them for a future year project. In short, staff's current feelings about this money, and this is certainly, you know, we want the council to give us policy direction on this, is that we've got a couple of roads that are longer in length, particularly Valley Boulevard comes to mind as the first order, and we'll need multiple years of funding to save up those multiple years of funding to be able to pave an extensive project at one time. But that's more efficient in our opinion and is a better use of this money than in little bursts here and there where we consume large amounts of money on just the soft costs of doing a small project. So those are our thoughts, and again, that's just giving you all some background, letting you know that the short-term goal is we need to lock this money down and send valid paperwork to the California Transportation Commission so that our money doesn't float away to some other agency. And October 16th being the deadline, it's either this meeting or a special meeting between now and the 16th, otherwise I'm out of time come next meeting. So my recommendation, given all that, is that you approve the amended special revenue fund for the surface seal of various roads 2017 project is attached, thereby amending the adopted 5-year budget for fiscal year 17-18 through fiscal year 21-22. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the public? Council?
I do. Jay, on the surface seals and stuff, are we gonna do opposite of what we did on Curry Street, to where we didn't do the dig outs that we needed to do that are now failing with brand new asphalt on it? Can we do it right? Can we spend the money and do the dig outs and then maybe come back the next year with some more, with some other money and cover them up? I mean, that's kind of ridiculous, you know. And it was ridiculous when it was proposed that we let these failing spots stay where they are, and then put brand new asphalt over them just so they can fail too. You know, it's.
You and I's recollection may be different. We did a number of dig outs.
We did a
on
number
Curry.
of dig outs.
Yeah.
We didn't do them all because we didn't have the money to do them all.
Yeah, that.
Well,
may have
you
been
know
the case.
what? Now it's coming back to bite us.
Well, that project, as you will recall, was an overlay project, not a seal coat project.
I understand that.
Seal coat projects usually aren't intended to fix failing sections of asphalt, but instead simply to rejuvenate
understand that
pavement.
also.
So no, I mean, your question was, are we going to do dig outs as part of this project? No, I'm not proposing that we do. But that's again because this is a different type of rehabilitation. When you do a seal coats project, you don't always do that.
I understand
You can't
that.
do that. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess it does. I'm not happy to hear it, but I'd
Well,
rather spend the money putting the road back to where it needs to be and letting it be ugly for a little while until we can seal coat over it and nobody's gonna notice it, than have alligators and have the road looking like where it's at now in Curry.
Sure. Well, we definitely
That's
share.
That's short-sightedness to me.
Well, we share the same opinion of
I'm sure you
what a
do.
failing road looks like and what we need to do with them. Anyway, in this case, anyway, I gave you the background. My thought is we just don't know how much money we're gonna get. So it's tough for me to start going, especially since I'm assuming we're gonna get much less than 400,000. If we were to get $100,000, you don't get a lot of dig outs for $100,000. I'd rather just supplement this project at this time. And again, we're not bound to this. When the money comes in, we can come back if that's the council's recommendation to us as staff and reevaluate this before kind of earmarking that money. We can do that.
Yeah, I'm not getting under case, I'm just letting my feelings be known.
Sure,
because
fair enough.
I know. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from the council?
I think we agree all on that. If we just had more money to do it right the first time, but you can't just let the other ones go while you're fixing one roadway, then the other ones are gonna be in need of the dig out in 2 years, you know. It's a tough one, yeah.
Not quite like that, Phil, but almost.
Okay, all right.
I get you.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the item number 8 as discussed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Let the record show 4 ayes. And now we'll turn it over to the city attorney.
What we're doing tonight is recommending that you extend the urgency ordinance you adopted last year to prohibit cultivation and use of marijuana while staff studies how they want to proceed permanently. This is the last extension you can do of this urgency ordinance. Staff actually is going to be bringing you its recommendation before the first of the year. Right now, it will be to prohibit all uses of marijuana that are not allowed under the law, except for delivery of marijuana. And there'll be some restrictions on that, but it will be allowed. But it'll take almost into December before that comes to you for approval. And we need to get a prohibition on the record in case the state decides to issue permits itself before January 1. They will not issue a permit to anyone wishing to sell, cultivate, or deliver marijuana if the local jurisdiction prohibits it. And we want to make sure that we prohibit it until we have a permanent ordinance in front of you that you can decide what to do with. And so the first step in extending this urgency ordinance is to adopt this report, which tells the public what staff has been doing to decide what permanently to do with regard to marijuana use and cultivation. This will not extend that ordinance. It simply is a required report, and then next meeting we will look at extending the ordinance.
Okay.
So the motion would be to approve the staff report.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Questions from the council?
Yeah, I just have one, Mr. Schroeder. Just for clarification purposes, this is talking about non-medicinal or non-medical related marijuana.
That's correct.
That is correct? Okay, that's my only question.
Make the motion.
I will. Motion as presented by Mr. Schroeder.
I'll second.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second on item number 9 as discussed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Motion carries. Let the record show it's 4 ayes. And we get to a city manager's report, which he probably doesn't have one.
I do.
Oh.
I'm not the city manager, as you will recognize. But as the assistant city manager, I'm going to just give you guys a quick update on a couple of things on behalf of Greg, who couldn't be here tonight. So I wanted to let everyone know that we have an upcoming project that we've been awarded, thanks to the hard work of Mr. Schlosser and his staff, and the relationships that he's built at Kerncog, and the relationships that Councilmember Smith has built at Kerncog. As you may recall, there was a active transportation program, grant funding source created by the state, is designed exclusively to promote and expand active transportation opportunities, those being pedestrian and bicycle focused. We submitted a number of projects in a prior grant cycle. There was some expanded money that was made available by the state to fund projects that didn't receive funding during that cycle, but that were close. We received an offer of a portion of the grant funds for a project that we submitted, and that is the Cherry Lane Sidewalk Gap Closure Project. And that's to build sidewalks along Cherry between Elm and Tucker. It was about a $500,000 project is our estimate. When the additional funds became available, they offered us approximately $250,000, with us having to make up the match with our own city funds. We felt like that was a bridge too far for us from a funding perspective, but Mr. Schlosser was able to work with the city of Bakersfield, who had some additional funds for a project that they received because over the course of the last few years, they were working on a bicycle ride-sharing program, and both the technology and the vendors available have expanded significantly, and so the cost has obviously come down, basic macroeconomics, right? And so they had additional funds they were willing to grant to us. So it's a great example of working together within the region to make sure that the money that we were offered didn't disappear into the ether, and that the money Bakersfield was offered that they didn't need to spend on the project that they had funded, we could use. And so it looks like we're going to be effectively fully funded for that project, and we're looking forward to starting that in 2019. So thank you again to Mr. Schlosser, his staff, the staff at Kerncog, and especially the city of Bakersfield for sharing those funds with us.
Bravo.
Additionally, we received last week 2 awards from the American Society of Civil Engineers, the San Joaquin Valley branch of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Ryan Montgomery, who's our Public Works Director, as you know, is also a member of ASCE and attended on our behalf to accept those awards. There were 2 awards, one for the Freedom Plaza project for Outstanding Small Project, and one for the Snyder Well Intertie project that we did with TCCWD and the school district. And Ryan, one of those projects is being submitted for the overall Los Angeles section of the ASC, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Freedom Plaza actually won an award, same category, Outstanding Small Project, for the entirety of the Los Angeles section. So Little Tehachapi is competing against larger members in the Los Angeles basin, so it's fantastic. And actually, just to brag on Kern County and the engineers we have, actually 3 projects from the local branch are getting awards at the Los Angeles section.
Cool.
So it's fantastic.
All right.
Probably had to do with that bow tie.
You may have, I think I may have warned it when we were discussing which projects get awarded.
How could you not get that?
Oh, I see that.
Yeah, so
Good for you.
so a couple of us wore our cowboy hats to the recent Fall Business Showcase put on by the Chamber of Commerce. So we were there en masse to support their event and also to promote Tehachapi as a place to do business. It's a great event put on by the Chamber, so big thank you to them and to the staff that put that on at the city. The Tehachapi Apple Festival is this weekend at Railroad Park, so expect a lot of visitors downtown. That's turned out in the last few years to be a big, successful event. It's not this weekend. Are you shaking your head at me, Tori?
Sorry, they decided not to use Railroad Park,
Oh.
and get on Green Street
yeah.
and the depot grounds.
Fantastic. So Railroad Park can be tricky from a traffic control standpoint. It sounds like we've worked out an alternative location
Chief
with
has
them.
it all figured out.
Yeah. So, as you can imagine, it goes. These types of large events require a lot of support from the city and from a lot of different staff members of the city. So, looking forward to that big event. TPD is hosting Coffee with a Cop at Dunkin' Donuts on Wednesday from 7:30 to 9:30 in the morning, and also hosting an ID theft awareness and recovery community presentation on Thursday in the TPD community room from 6 to 8. Just want to make everyone aware of those and thank them for their efforts in reaching out to the community. So, with that, I don't have anything else for you.
Okay. Council members, comments?
I have none.
I'm good.
You're good?
Oh, gee. You had to look at my list, didn't you? Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have had a little bit of input from some of the folks in town regarding their concern for the special meetings that we have planned coming up for the districting. The concerns are that we are off day being on a Thursday and we're off time being at 4 o'clock rather than our normal Monday meeting day and 6 o'clock being the time. And the concern was, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a lot of folks that would like to attend a third or a fourth public hearing, will not be able to attend due to the fact that it's during work hours, basically. That's the first meeting that's scheduled. The second meeting even gets more complicated because it will ultimately be held or planned for 10 o'clock in the morning as the final meeting that we have for the public to attend and to participate in regarding the districting issue that we face in town. Is there anything that we can do as either a council or as a municipality to make that more accessible to people that may have input that do not or cannot attend at an off day, off time meeting for such an important issue?
I won't even be able to make one of those meetings because it conflicts with my meeting schedule for regular meetings for other districts. But We
That
scratched
was
our head
skewed.
and we conferred over and over again, and I'm speaking for Justina now, the lawyer that knows more about this than I do. There was no way we could meet the time frame that the law requires without these meetings. Now, that doesn't mean that the public can't submit written comments. They could certainly have someone come on their behalf, perhaps, if they're able to find someone to do that. It's not the best situation, and we're trying to work within the constraints of the law and not get sued. So the simple answer is no. There's not any other, there might be a day or two flexibility, but I think the dates and times were selected because of what's available here and whether staff could be there. Like I said, I can't be at one of those meetings. So nobody's happy with it, and certainly the people that are talking to you aren't happy with it.
Well, the bigger concern, Tom, is that 10 o'clock in the morning meeting. I mean, people that wanted to participate in the final discussion before we change the way our community does business literally cannot attend without taking a day off of work. And that's a challenge for some folks. And I think we need to go back to the drawing board.
Isn't that on the Saturday?
I don't know what the date is.
Tori, do you remember off the top of your head? I'm sorry, so
Ashley
Ashley
stand
Whitmore
by
is
a
our
second
deputy
here.
city clerk.
The second one was November 2nd.
So second and maybe the 16th?
Part of the issue that we have in scheduling these meetings is our desire to have a demographer available who's drafting the maps to be able to answer questions.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, there's a number of cities going through this issue at the same time, so his availability is exceptionally limited.
Yeah, that was a big problem.
And so having him available is we believe is important. And so we were trying to work within the constraints of his schedule, within the constraints of the staff schedule. Again, we tried to organize the meetings in such a way that Mr. Schroeder could participate in both. We weren't able to do that either. We looked at a lot of dates over the next month and a half, and it's just tricky to find one that lines up with everyone's schedule. So, as you can imagine, Monday night at 6 p.m. doesn't work for a lot of people too. I mean, there's less than 20 people in the audience tonight. So I don't know if that's a scheduling issue or if that's a participation issue. As Mr. Schroeder mentioned though, the maps will be published and available for the public in advance of those hearings. That's a requirement of the law, and it's the right thing to do.
To be heard.
And so, and it's an opportunity for people to review those maps. They're welcome to obviously speak to staff or to the council to share those comments. They can submit those in writing.
That's a violation.
And we picked 2 different dates and 2 different times to try and capture as best we could both available time slots for people, because some people are available in the morning and not available at night. Some people are available at night and not in the morning. So,
Well, the concern that was directly conveyed is that, when we get off schedule or off time, there's a certain amount of skepticism that comes into the equation. And I just don't like that being implied back toward me as being, what's the city trying to do by having a meeting where we're not basically providing that access to the community? And I still think that we ought to go back to the drawing board, and I realize that time is of the essence in this particular case. We need to go back to the drawing board and try to come up with a solution, and maybe potentially we even have a 5th hearing.
we've actually discussed that as well. There is the potential for a 5th hearing, and there is time to potentially do a 5th hearing if it's necessary. It will be very abbreviated because of the time pressures associated statutorily with this process, but that is a possibility, and we've discussed it with Justina. So
You could have it on a Saturday. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be in a.
I believe that 10 a.m. meeting. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm sorry because we've discussed so many dates. I'll be honest, I don't remember off the top of my
Well,
head.
it's,
But I thought
the one date is,
Thursday, the first one's a Thursday.
Correct.
October
Yeah, I know that.
12th at 4,
Yep.
and November 2nd at 10. Then you
Okay.
look at your calendar.
Yeah, you're right. That's a Thursday. So,
Okay,
um,
but a Saturday,
I think,
Yeah.
I think we have a problem in our municipal code with Saturday meetings.
Do we?
I have to look and see.
I think we ought to exempt it.
And getting the demographer there on a Saturday might be a challenge also. So again, we want the demographer there, who's drafting the maps with the public and with the city council's input, and he needs to hear your feedback. We're not drafting the maps. So if he's not at the meeting, and we have a meeting at a regularly scheduled council meeting, which by the way, he cannot attend, because of prior commitments from, again, he's doing this throughout the state.
Mr. Kirk, let
We
me.
can pass those on to him, and if the council would prefer to have this at their regularly scheduled time without the demographer who's drawing the maps on your behalf, at that meeting, then we could certainly do that at your direction. I mean, that's,
I would
Yeah.
actually feel more comfortable without the demographer, but the public's input.
Well, could I suggest something real quick?
No? You don't want
We
to-
have
Oh,
we have an
legally.
expert over here with Skype and YouTube and everything else. Couldn't we possibly just get the demographer, if we can't get him here in person, if we could get back on schedule with days and times, have them wire them in. I mean, this is
We talked
2017. We can do stuff like that.
We talked about having him on the telephone.
Well, Skype him
I felt
in.
that wasn't gonna be good.
but if that's what the council would
Because
prefer,
he can't-
we
he
can go
can't
back
make
to
his
him and see if he's
presentation.
available for those meetings.
He
But that's
can't
gonna be a challenge for him. Again, technology is not always the greatest, right? I mean, we learned that tonight. So if we have that meeting and for whatever technological reason, we're not able to make it work where he can participate, we had a conference call with him to discuss these dates and times and had a number of technological issues just getting him on the conference call with us. Not on our end, on his. And so, is it possible? Sure. And if
Well, I
that's-
think we need to remember, we work for the people in the community.
Absolutely.
And if the people are not comfortable or satisfied with how we are presenting our final information on a matter that's as critical as this, then we need to do a workaround on that and make sure that we don't have any input coming back. If we work for the people of Tehachapi. If the demographer needs to do something special, he's a contractor to us. If he needs to assign somebody to come and do the presentation, he can do that. So I think as a council right now, and I wish Ms. Wiggins was here to have it unanimous, but I believe that we need to take an initiative tonight to go back to the drawing board and try to revise that schedule as much as we possibly can to make it more available to the people.
Well, you can't take any action on that. It's not on the agenda.
Well, let's put it on the agenda, we can put it on the agenda right now, can't we?
No.
And put it on the first special meeting.
You can only put it on the agenda right now if it's something that has come before the city council after the agenda was posted. But this has been long known for a long time. So it would have
The
to.
date has been long known?
The issue you're bringing up has been long known, when these meetings were gonna be held.
No, I beg to differ, Tom. I just found out about this last Thursday with a phone call from Ashley, last minute, saying, hey, we've got a change in venue, not venue, but time and day. So that's not a long period of time, and
It's prior to when the agenda was posted. I believe, when would the agenda have been put? You guys.
The agenda
It
was
comes out on
posted
Thursday.
at 5.
Thursday at 5? And when did you receive notice of it?
she called me maybe at 3:30. Yeah, I mean, she's trying to get the agenda out, but, we're headed down a slippery slope in
I
this.
can't recommend that you put it on the agenda tonight and discuss it.
Oh, no, not tonight.
Well, that's what he's talking about, yeah.
I'd like to discuss it tonight to get it
Well,
taken
we're
care
talking
of.
about it tonight, so.
Because the next meeting that we
Right.
have is gonna be after the fact to where we can make a change. So we either make a decision tonight to make a change to the upcoming date, or we lose the opportunity.
Right, my thought is that these people are working for us, we're giving them our money, we're giving them their money. They ought to make it as convenient to the people at Tehachapi as possibly they can. And just like Ken said, if the big guy can't be there, number 2 can be there, number 3 can be there, number 4 can be there, somebody can be there at our convenience, at their convenience.
My understanding was they had nobody that could be here on our regular meeting
Well,
nights.
maybe we ought to get somebody else.
Well, we're taking the advice of the person who's litigated these things and used demography.
I get that, but they're not the only ones that are doing
No, no, they're not. But we've gone down that road to hire these guys.
that. We have,
Yeah,
but they're not, if they can't perform, then what are we doing? Why are we
Well,
paying them?
they can perform.
If,
they haven't so far.
They can perform, they just can't be at our meetings when we have the.
then what good are they?
Can we do this as a compromise? Do the 4 o'clock on October 12th and see if we can't get a better time than 10 o'clock on the
November
on the-
2nd.
Whatever day that is the next available day.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, I think people could do the 4 if they have to, if they're really interested in being vocal about this or whatever you gotta do. But the 10 o'clock, I'm not sure I can make that one. So you might not even have a quorum. So, if we're not all here. But if you could get that second meeting off of 10 o'clock, that would be very helpful.
and what can we do,
Afternoon.
what can we do to advertise it in the meantime if we can't change other people's, that we're paying time schedules to fit ours? You
Who's
know,
gonna be
what can we do? Can we put out, posters, billboards? We own them all, we can buy them all, you know, for everything else we want. You know, this is something that's changing the face of Tehachapi.
Yes, it is.
You know, and it's not a small thing. And, you know, I've got no dog in the game because I don't know where it's going, and none of us do. But the thing is that what we've been doing for 100 years is now gonna change because somebody's telling us that we have to change or they're gonna take our money away.
And it's just saying.
And the people wanna know that, and they need to have input so they can bitch about it, and except for just me and you guys.
Not get pumped.
They have to be able to
They
participate.
do.
Not get pumped.
I think probably the noble thing would be to go ahead and have the one on October 12th, and then see what we could do about the second. That way we've at least got one of the meetings out of the way that we have to get out of the way. And 4 o'clock, hey, we've had many meetings at 4 o'clock when we're dealing with the budget proposals. So I think, you know, that would probably be the right way to do it. And we can work on that second one. Not guaranteeing it, but at least work on the second
Well,
one.
is there a way that we can have a meeting in between times to say what happened at the 4 o'clock meeting?
Yeah, you can have a special
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Let's do that.
Do that too.
Let's keep people informed, that's what we're here for.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean-
we're gonna have a council meeting after the 12th anyway.
And if I can,
Yeah,
we're all
next
on the
week.
same page with you guys. I think it's important to know, we're not coming up with dates and times with the intent of excluding the public.
No one's saying that.
Well-
No one's saying that.
And I appreciate that. That's not what it sounds like.
Well, I'll tell you, to
And
be
so-
honest, Mr. Kirk, when people come to me or any of us on the council and they say, hey, you know, what's going on? There's a significant matter in front of our community. We get through 2 regularly scheduled meetings at the proper, and I'm gonna call proper, it's either a Monday or a Tuesday, at 6 o'clock. And then all of a sudden, on this draconian thing that's been put in front of us, we shift into 9th gear. And what was said to me is exactly what I said to you earlier. People are skeptical of what's going on, and I have got to do what I've got to do what I've got to do, and we've got to do what we've got to do to reduce or eliminate that skepticism in its entirety. And if it takes us to go back to the drawing board to get a meeting pulled together so people can participate, then we need to do it.
Well, I like the idea of an additional meeting, so that if there is this uproar, then we will know after the 4th that we need 2 more meetings instead of 1 more meeting.
And I think
I
we'll
can
know
go with that.
after, I think we'll
Okay.
know after the 3rd. The 3rd public hearing that's currently scheduled for October 12th.
Okay.
We'll have a pretty good idea. I haven't received any phone calls about this issue, and I don't believe the city manager has received any phone calls about this issue. I recognize they call you guys, which is the right thing to do. You're their elected representatives, right? And so,
But we should encourage
We
people
need
to
that
write in
feedback
if they're not
also.
gonna be there too.
and we
Even though
can,
they can.
and we can appreciate the fact that this date is outside of the norm. We get that. We made that decision based on what we thought was a good decision, and that is to have the demographer here. And that's a date that he could be there for. So,
Yeah, well, maybe we don't.
but we can, if the council's comfortable with him not being here, and would prefer to do those things on a different day, we can absolutely look at different days. We have enough time, especially for the fourth public hearing, from a notice requirement.
But we gotta get
to
that
make a
third
change.
one in.
The third one's gotta be done.
We've gotta do that.
You know, we have a notice
Is that the 4
requirement.
o'clock one?
Yeah.
That's the 4 o'clock one on the
Okay.
12th.
I think we'll know what that one,
And the demographer
Kinda-
will be here for that meeting at a minimum, so that he can present the maps, he can answer those direct questions for you, and for the public, in a better way than we could. Even though that we feel as up to speed on this issue as we can, we think it's the right thing for him to be there,
Sure.
at a minimum. So if we need to reschedule
and
the
then he
fourth
could
public
give us a
hearing,
feel of how important it has to be for him to be at the next one, or he could say, here's the maps, I could be available by phone.
Yep.
Or whatever on the final one, or we can have another meeting in between.
And they,
That way
and
we're
we can be
saying-
informed, and so we can.
And the
pass that
public is
information
saying, we're
along.
taking an extra step with an extra
Sure,
meeting,
sure.
and I'll commit to trying to be that other meeting to do this, so.
so I think we've heard your feedback, and again, can appreciate where you're coming from.
Okay.
Bravo.
Okay, okay, great, thanks. The next question, or the next, well, it ties into this districting issue. I have been asked very specifically to comment or obtain response from either staff or legal tonight regarding a statement that was published in one of our local newspapers. And let me just read this real quick. And it's a summary or a summarization of the districting process. And this sort of leads back into this skepticism matter that I discussed a little bit earlier. And I'm going to quote what was written in one of our local newspapers. It's very short. In the by-district system, candidates must live in the district he or she represents. Voters can cast ballots only for the candidate from their district and cannot vote for any other candidates. If there is only one candidate running from a given district, that candidate will win automatically, unopposed. If no candidate steps up from a district to run, the city council will appoint a person from the district to serve in that seat. Or the position will go vacant, leaving the voters of that district with no representation and no control over who else sits on the council. The latter part of that has raised a few eyebrows. Because if you get to the essence, I think, of what is trying to be accomplished by this person, who we really don't know a whole lot about, coming to us, telling us that we need to change our system, but if we don't get somebody from a particular district to step up, the folks that are currently on the council can turn around and appoint somebody.
From that district.
Well, if you can't get somebody to run in the district unopposed, well, how can you appoint somebody
It
to?
defeats the whole purpose of what they're trying to do.
I mean, we really get into a position here, Mr. Schroeder, that is,
Agreed, but they would have to appoint someone from that district. If they couldn't find anyone from that district, then it would just have to go unrepresented.
Otherwise, you'd have someone from another district with 2 representatives on the council.
Well, that's what he's getting at.
Yeah,
that's what he's
and you can't allow that, so either unrepresented or.
No, it's a very.
It would have to be
very
from that
bad
district.
Law for this town and for a lot of small cities. Very bad.
I gotta be honest, my perspective of this is changing quickly and drastically from what some of the intent was initially set out to be, I believe.
The intent was not.
Well, nothing here locally, but from wherever this came from. Do we know, is this basically verbatim on how
Who
the...
wrote that? Who wrote that? I mean, who said that?
Well, it was one of our local reporters in one of...
Was she reporting something that Justina told her, or
I
something?
believe it was.
Mr.
Yes.
Shipman might have told her?
No. I'm fairly confident that it came from Mrs. East.
Okay.
Do we have any input on whether or not is that accurate as far as we know with
It
this?
sounded accurate to me as you were reading.
Okay. Okay. All right, well, that's,
If I may?
Yes,
Yeah.
you may.
Was it you?
Yes, it was me. My original story, I did quote Mrs. Eads, and she says pretty much the same thing. The legislature put all this in place. Oh, Tina Cunningham.
It doesn't work.
There, oh.
Keep on yelling.
There have been mixed results in the cities that have adopted the district system, she said. In some cities, a minority candidate has been elected, in others, nobody is running. Then they have to appoint somebody. In some cities, there is no one interested, or no qualified candidate willing to run. That's a direct quote from Mrs. Aziz.
Which begs the question, is there nobody in that certain district that would even consider being?
You folks, you're speculating
Yeah, we
that
are.
we're not gonna have someone who would be interested in any district to run. Okay, so you're trying to move to a conclusion based on a speculation that something won't happen. So I don't think we should go down that road either. All right? So you go through the process. We're not gonna spend millions of dollars to fight this, of those folks' money and my folks' money and yours. We're all in this together. Are we willing to gamble that little Tehachapi could do something that big cities like Palmdale with multi-million-dollar lawsuit couldn't win? I don't think we're in that frame of mind.
Mr. Smith, also.
I think, excuse me,
Yes.
I think we're in this process so that, I think it's been voiced that none of us like this, myself included, but we're in the process here of allowing the public to comment and allowing the public to understand why we're having to do what we may have to do. Okay? But we shouldn't be saying, well, this could happen or that could happen, and we shouldn't do it. You can't go down that road either. That's just
I
sheer
think we're just
speculation.
griping here, Phil,
And,
that's all.
well, sure,
You're
we're
right,
all
you're
griping,
exactly right, yeah.
but we're gonna have, I assume, 5 districts, and I can't imagine that we come up with a district that no one wants to take responsibility for their area. I would be inclined to say it's more likely that you're gonna have districts with more than one person, or at least one person that said, I'll step up.
The big issue that differs Tehachapi from Palmdale, and I mean, I'm stating the obvious. Palmdale has got a couple 100,000 people. They have a big bank account, and they are ripe for somebody to come after them in the fashion that they did. Tehachapi has 9,000 people, or pick a number, 8,200, 9,200, whatever our number is. You know, they are in essence going to turn our process upside down and inside out. For what gain to them?
$30,000.
Are you willing to gamble the city's general fund to fight this and to spend money on a lawsuit to fight it?
It depends on how the future meetings and the future information comes out, Mr. Smith.
Well, let's see. Let's have the meetings and find out.
Fair enough.
All right, here we go.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Mr. Kirk, this would have been directed at Mr. Garrett, and unfortunately he's not here. Do we have any input or response from the FAA regarding the report that they, have been working on for months? Have we heard anything from the FAA yet?
Yep, we received their land use inspection report on Friday. I had a chance to review it today, and we have copies for the city council boxes that'll be in your box tomorrow. So,
I guess that's good news.
yeah, I mean, we only waited 6 months for it, so yeah, we're happy to get their feedback from it.
Do you have any thoughts on anything that you read in the report?
Only that they have 6 or 7 items that they'd like us to address with regards to land use, in terms of leasing, fair market value, lease rates, aeronautical use of hangars, those types of issues, and we fully intend to abide by all of them, so.
Okay, super, and you said
We think
copies
it's pretty
will be...
straightforward.
Copies will be available to all of the council members?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
super.
And to the public, so.
Okay, great, thanks. Dovetailing into the FAA report, is there any update on the motocross track?
Only that the grant has expired, and the motocross track, for all intents and purposes for now, will sit on the shelf.
Okay. And then I just have one final comment. Most of us, I think, are aware that we lost a person from our Public Works Department, Mr. Dennis Artser. And Dennis has been around for a long time. He was a fantastic Public Works employee. I think, we lost a tremendous jump in the ditch and make the dirt fly guy. And I would just like to thank Mr. Artzler for his service in the city of Tehachapi, and I wish him the best of luck in the future. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
That's it. Look at my list is, I don't have a second page.
The only thing I have to say is, as a result of the tragedies that happened last night, when you go home tonight, you know, what we did here is all well and good. But what really matters to all of us is our families. So when you go home tonight, give them a hug, because you never know if they're not going to be there tomorrow. So with that, we'll go into closed session, and we'll report out.
Great, thank you.
Oh, that was lively.